In a bold and transformative move, China has advanced its ambition to reshape the global financial landscape by integrating its digital yuan into the cross-border payment systems of multiple nations, specifically targeting regions with significant economic influence. This initiative includes partnerships with 10 member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) and 6 nations in the Middle East, creating a financial network that collectively handles a substantial portion of international trade. By some estimates, this bloc represents nearly 40% of global trade volume, positioning it as a formidable counterweight to traditional Western-dominated financial systems. The digital yuan, a state-backed cryptocurrency, allows China to facilitate transactions without relying on the US dollar or the SWIFT system, which has long served as the backbone of international payments under Western oversight. This development marks a significant shift, as it enables participating countries to settle trades directly in China's digital currency, reducing their exposure to US financial policies, including sanctions and currency fluctuations. For ASEAN nations, which have seen trade with China grow dramatically over the past decade, adopting the digital yuan strengthens economic ties with Beijing while diversifying their financial options. Similarly, Middle Eastern countries, key players in global energy markets, stand to benefit from a system that bypasses traditional dollar-based constraints. China's motivations are twofold. First, it seeks to establish a financial ecosystem independent of Western influence, giving Beijing greater control over its economic destiny. Second, by promoting the digital yuan as a viable alternative to the US dollar, China aims to erode the dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency. This is particularly significant given the timing, as the move follows heightened trade tensions with the United States, including new tariffs imposed by the US government. By forging these alliances, China is not only securing its economic interests, but also signaling its intent to challenge the global financial order. The implications of this shift are profound. For decades, the US dollar has underpinned global trade, giving Washington significant leverage over international markets. A successful expansion of the digital yuan could weaken this dominance, potentially reshaping everything from trade agreements to geopolitical alliances. For businesses and consumers in participating nations, the adoption of China's digital currency could streamline cross-border transactions, lower costs, and reduce reliance on volatile dollar-based systems. However, it also raises concerns about Beijing's growing influence, as countries integrating the digital yuan may align more closely with China's economic and political priorities. This strategic pivot underscores China's long-term vision of a multipolar financial world, where no single currency or system holds sway. As more nations explore alternatives to the dollar, the global economy may be on the cusp of a new era, one where digital currencies play a central role, and China's economic clout continues to rise. In a dramatic escalation of global trade tensions, China has taken a bold step to assert its technological independence by severing ties with 2 of the world's leading semiconductor companies, ASML, based in the Netherlands, and TSMC, headquartered in Taiwan. This move, which effectively halts billions of dollars in equipment and technology exchanges, is a direct response to punitive measures from the United States, particularly new tariffs and export restrictions aimed at curbing China's technological advancement. By walking away from these industry titans, China is signaling its intent to not only weather external pressures, but also to redefine the global semiconductor landscape on its own terms. The catalyst for this seismic shift lies in Washington's efforts to limit China's access to cutting-edge chip-making technology. The U.S., leveraging its influence over allies like the Netherlands, pushed for restrictions on exporting critical equipment, such as ASML's advanced lithography machines, which are essential for producing high-performance microchips. These machines, once a cornerstone of China's semiconductor ambitions, were rendered inaccessible through revoked licenses and halted support, leaving Chinese firms in a precarious position. Rather than capitulate, Beijing chose to double down, redirecting its resources toward building a fully domestic chip-making ecosystem that no longer depends on Western suppliers. This pivot is not a spur-of-the-moment reaction, but the culmination of years of strategic planning. China has poured massive investments, estimated in the tens of billions, into its semiconductor sector, focusing on everything from chip design to manufacturing equipment. The government has mobilized a vast workforce, including thousands of engineers, many with experience from global tech hubs, to drive innovation at home. The result is a rapidly maturing industry capable of producing advanced chips using domestically developed tools. Companies like SMIC, a leading Chinese chipmaker, are now pushing the boundaries of what's possible without reliance on foreign technology, aiming to compete with global leaders in both quality and scale. The implications of China's decision are far-reaching. For ASML and TSMC, the loss of the Chinese market represents a significant blow, as China was a major buyer of their products. Globally, the move threatens to disrupt supply chains, as semiconductors are the backbone of countless industries, from smartphones to electric vehicles. For China, the gamble is high but calculated. By prioritizing self-reliance, it aims to insulate itself from future sanctions and establish itself as a tech superpower. Success could mean a reordering of global tech dominance, with Chinese firms setting new standards for innovation. This shift also carries risks. Building a self-sufficient semiconductor industry is a monumental task, requiring breakthroughs in areas where the West still holds an edge. Yet, China's resolve appears unshaken, driven by a vision of technological sovereignty. As the world watches, this bold strategy could reshape not just the chip industry, but the balance of economic power for years to come. In recent years, China has embarked on an ambitious journey to transform its semiconductor industry, a sector critical to modern technology and global economic power. Since 2022, the nation has made remarkable strides towards self-sufficiency, driven by a strategic vision to reduce dependence on foreign technology and establish itself as a global leader in chip production. This effort, fueled by substantial financial investment and a concerted push for innovation, has seen China develop a robust domestic supply chain capable of producing advanced microchips, challenging the dominance of traditional tech giants and reshaping the global semiconductor landscape. At the heart of this transformation is a massive infusion of resources. China has allocated tens of billions of dollars to bolster every facet of its chip-making ecosystem, from research and development to manufacturing infrastructure. These funds have supported the creation of state-of-the-art factories, the acquisition of cutting-edge technologies, and the training of a highly skilled workforce. By prioritizing local talent, China has assembled a formidable team of engineers and scientists, many with experience from leading global tech firms. This human capital, combined with strategic government backing, has accelerated progress that many outside observers once thought would take decades to achieve. One of the most striking outcomes of this initiative is the development of a nearly self-sufficient supply chain. Where China once relied heavily on imported equipment and expertise, it now produces a significant portion of its chip-making tools domestically. Factories are equipped with locally designed machinery, enabling the production of sophisticated chips that power everything from consumer electronics to advanced telecommunications systems. This shift has been particularly evident in the work of companies like SMIC, which has made breakthroughs in manufacturing processes that rival those of established industry leaders. By focusing on innovative techniques, such as domestically developed lithography systems, China has demonstrated its ability to compete on a global stage without relying on Western technology. The significance of these advancements extends beyond technical achievements. For China, a localized semiconductor industry is a matter of national security and economic resilience. By reducing vulnerability to international sanctions and supply chain disruptions, the country is better positioned to navigate global trade tensions. Moreover, its ability to produce advanced chips domestically strengthens its influence in industries like artificial intelligence, 5G, and electric vehicles, where cutting-edge semiconductors are indispensable. For the global market, China's rise as a chip-making powerhouse introduces new competition, potentially lowering costs, but also shifting the balance of technological influence. This bold endeavor is not without challenges. The semiconductor industry demands relentless innovation and precision, and China must continue to overcome technical hurdles to maintain its momentum. Yet, the progress made since 2022 signals a clear intent. China is no longer content to play catch-up. Instead, it is forging a path toward technological sovereignty, with implications that could redefine global markets and power dynamics for generations. China's recent moves in the global tech and financial arenas have sent shockwaves through international markets, creating a cascade of economic consequences that threaten to reshape the stability of major economies, particularly the United States. By withdrawing from partnerships with key semiconductor firms and strategically adjusting its financial holdings, China has ignited a series of disruptions that are reverberating across industries and households alike. These actions, rooted in escalating trade disputes, signal the emergence of a broader economic conflict with far-reaching implications for businesses, investors, and everyday consumers. One significant fallout has been felt in the semiconductor sector, where China's decision to halt purchases from a major European chip equipment manufacturer has led to a sharp decline in that company's earnings. This pivot away from Western suppliers, driven by restrictions imposed by the U.S. and its allies, has not only strained corporate balance sheets, but also disrupted the global supply chain for chips, which are critical to everything from smartphones to medical devices. The sudden loss of China's market, one of the largest for advanced chip-making tools, underscores the vulnerability of tech firms reliant on international trade and highlights the growing cost of geopolitical tensions. Beyond technology, China has taken steps to recalibrate its financial strategy, notably by reducing its holdings of U.S. government debt and divesting from prominent American technology stocks. This deliberate sell-off is more than a portfolio adjustment. It's a calculated move to exert pressure on U.S. financial markets. By unloading bonds, China could drive up U.S. borrowing costs, potentially pushing mortgage rates higher and squeezing homeowners already grappling with economic uncertainty. Similarly, the withdrawal from tech stocks risks destabilizing a sector that has been a cornerstone of investor confidence, as falling share prices could erode wealth and dampen market optimism. The consequences of these actions extend to the broader American public, particularly those reliant on retirement savings. Many pension funds and 401(k) plans are heavily invested in tech and financial markets, and a sustained downturn could erode their value, threatening the financial security of millions. For the average worker, this could mean delayed retirements or diminished nest eggs, amplifying economic anxiety at a time when costs for housing, healthcare, and essentials are already climbing. The ripple effect could also dampen consumer spending, slowing economic growth and creating a feedback loop of uncertainty. Globally, China's maneuvers are intensifying fears of an escalating economic standoff. By leveraging its financial clout, China is not just responding to trade barriers, but actively challenging the U.S.'s economic dominance. For policymakers, the challenge is stark. Unchecked escalation could lead to market volatility that punishes investors and consumers alike. As this high-stakes game unfolds, the world watches to see whether these disruptions will force a rethinking of global trade policies or deepen divisions, with ordinary citizens bearing the brunt of the fallout. The global economic stage is witnessing a dramatic escalation in tensions between the United States and China, as both nations engage in a tit-for-tat trade conflict that threatens to disrupt markets and reshape international relations. At the heart of this standoff is a series of aggressive trade policies, with the U.S., under President Trump's leadership, proposing steep tariffs on Chinese imports to pressure Beijing into altering its economic practices. In response, China has signaled its readiness to retaliate with a multifaceted strategy, leveraging tariffs, resource controls, and financial maneuvers to counter American moves and protect its interests. This intensifying trade war carries profound implications for businesses, consumers, and the global economy. The U.S. has upped the ante by threatening significant tariffs on goods imported from China, a move aimed at addressing trade imbalances and boosting domestic industries. These proposed duties, potentially affecting billions in trade, are designed to make Chinese products less competitive in American markets. However, China has made it clear it will not back down, vowing to respond with equal or greater force. One potential countermeasure is raising tariffs on U.S. exports, particularly high-value items like electronics and machinery. Such a move would hit American manufacturers hard, increasing costs for companies reliant on the Chinese market and potentially driving up prices for U.S. consumers. Beyond tariffs, China holds a powerful card in its dominance over critical resources, particularly rare earth minerals, which are essential for producing everything from smartphones to renewable energy technologies. By restricting exports of these materials, China could disrupt global supply chains, forcing U.S. industries to scramble for alternatives at higher costs. This strategic leverage underscores China's ability to inflict economic pain far beyond traditional trade measures, targeting the technological foundations of modern economies. Another tool in China's arsenal is the potential adjustment of its currency, the yuan. By allowing the yuan to weaken against the dollar, China could make its exports more affordable on the global stage, offsetting the impact of U.S. tariffs. This maneuver would not only bolster Chinese competitiveness, but also attract trade partners looking for cost-effective suppliers, further eroding U.S. market share. Additionally, China could employ subtler tactics, such as tightening regulatory checks on U.S. goods at its borders. These non-tariff barriers, like prolonged customs delays for American products, could create logistical nightmares for U.S. exporters, raising costs and disrupting supply chains. The broader consequences of this trade war are sobering. For American consumers, higher tariffs could mean pricier goods, from electronics to clothing, squeezing household budgets. For businesses, the uncertainty of retaliatory measures risks stifling investment and innovation. Globally, the conflict could fragment trade networks, pushing other nations to choose sides or seek alternative partnerships. As both powers dig in, the world braces for a prolonged struggle that could redefine economic alliances and test the resilience of the global market system. In a transformative shift reshaping global commerce, China is deepening its economic ties with key regions and blocs, positioning itself at the forefront of an emerging financial paradigm that challenges Western dominance. By forging stronger trade relationships with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, and expanding the influence of the BRICS coalition, China is not only amplifying its economic clout, but also spearheading efforts to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar. This strategic realignment, underscored by the creation of alternative financial institutions, signals a bold ambition to redefine the rules of global trade and finance. China's trade with ASEAN has surged to unprecedented levels, reflecting a deepening partnership that has made the region one of Beijing's most vital economic allies. This booming relationship, driven by robust exchanges in goods, services, and investment, highlights ASEAN's growing importance as a counterbalance to traditional Western markets. The integration of China's digital currency into ASEAN's financial systems further cements this bond, enabling smoother, dollar-free transactions that bypass conventional global payment networks. For ASEAN nations, this offers greater economic flexibility and reduced exposure to U.S. financial policies, fostering a sense of shared prosperity with China. Simultaneously, the BRICS coalition, originally comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has expanded its reach, welcoming nations like Nigeria and Indonesia into its fold. This growth has transformed BRICS into a formidable bloc, representing over half the world's population and a significant share of global economic output. Nigeria, with its vast population and energy resources, adds a dynamic African presence, while Indonesia's economic heft and strategic location bolster the group's influence in Asia. Together, These nations are amplifying BRICS, vision of a multipolar world, where economic power is distributed more equitably, free from the constraints of a single dominant currency. A cornerstone of this vision is the push for de-dollarization, a movement gaining traction as BRICS members and their partners explore trade in local currencies. By reducing dependence on the US dollar, these countries aim to shield themselves from external financial pressures, such as sanctions, and foster greater economic sovereignty. This shift is particularly appealing to nations like Nigeria, which seek to diversify their trade networks, and Indonesia, which is investing heavily in regional partnerships. The result is a growing web of trade agreements that prioritize flexibility and mutual benefit over adherence to a dollar-centric system. To support this new economic framework, BRICS is advancing the New Development Bank, an institution designed to provide funding in non-dollar currencies. Unlike traditional Western-led lenders, this bank prioritizes the needs of developing nations, offering loans and grants that promote infrastructure, technology, and sustainable growth. By doing so, it challenges the monopoly of established financial bodies, giving emerging economies access to capital without the strings attached to dollar-based financing. For the global economy, this could herald a future where financial power is more decentralized, with China and its allies playing a central role. The United States and the European Union are locked in a heated trade dispute that threatens to disrupt one of the world's most cherished industries, wine and spirits. At the center of this escalating conflict is a bold proposal from President Trump to impose a staggering 200% tariff on European alcoholic beverages, including iconic products like French champagne, Italian wines, and other spirits. This aggressive stance, framed as a retaliation against EU tariffs on American goods, has ignited fears of a full-blown trade war, with profound consequences for producers, consumers, and the delicate balance of transatlantic commerce. The proposed tariffs are a direct response to what the U.S. perceives as unfair trade practices by the EU, particularly duties imposed on American exports like steel and whiskey. By targeting wine and alcohol, a sector that symbolizes European cultural and economic heritage, the U.S. aims to exert maximum pressure on EU policymakers. The European wine industry, a powerhouse generating billions annually, faces an existential threat under these tariffs. Higher duties would dramatically increase the cost of EU wines in the U.S., one of the largest markets for premium beverages. For American consumers, this could mean paying double or more for their favorite bottles, potentially driving them toward domestic alternatives or other global producers. For European producers, particularly in France, Italy, and Spain, the stakes are enormous. These countries rely heavily on exports to the U.S., where demand for high-end wines and champagnes has fueled consistent growth. A 200% tariff could erode market share, forcing winemakers to either absorb losses or pass costs onto consumers, both of which could cripple smaller producers. The ripple effects would extend beyond vineyards, impacting distributors, retailers, and tourism in wine regions that depend on global brand recognition. In response, the EU has vowed to protect its industry, signaling readiness to retaliate with countermeasures that could further strain trade relations. This tariff standoff is more than a dispute over beverages. It reflects deeper tensions in US-EU economic ties. The EU has criticized the US approach as short-sighted, arguing that escalating tariffs harms both sides by raising costs and stifling trade. Meanwhile, the US sees an opportunity to bolster its domestic wine industry, particularly in regions like California, which could capture market share if European products become prohibitively expensive. However, this strategy risks alienating a key ally, as the EU is one of the US's largest trading partners, with a relationship built on mutual economic dependence. The broader implications of this trade war are sobering. Escalating tariffs could disrupt other sectors, from agriculture to manufacturing, as retaliatory measures multiply. For consumers, higher prices could strain budgets already stretched by inflation. For businesses, uncertainty looms as supply chains and markets adjust to new barriers. As both sides dig in, the prospect of a negotiated resolution seems distant, raising the specter of a prolonged conflict that could reshape global trade patterns and test the resilience of both economies. The once steady economic partnership between the United States and Canada is unraveling, giving way to a heated trade dispute that has thrust Tesla, the American electric vehicle (EV) giant, into the center of a high-stakes conflict. Fueled by escalating tensions over U.S.-imposed tariffs on Canadian goods, Canada has responded with a series of targeted retaliatory measures aimed directly at Tesla, threatening not only the company's market position, but also the broader U.S. EV industry. This clash, rooted in competing economic priorities, risks disrupting North America's interconnected markets and reshaping the future of clean energy technology. Canada's countermeasures are multifaceted and strategic. In response to U.S. tariffs, Ottawa has imposed special duties on Tesla vehicles, significantly raising their cost for Canadian consumers. Additionally, Canada has excluded Tesla from its EV subsidy programs, which previously incentivized purchases of electric cars, further eroding the company's competitiveness. Most critically, Canada is considering restrictions on the export of rare earth minerals, vital components like lithium, cobalt, and nickel used in EV batteries. As a major supplier of these materials, Canada's potential move to limit access could choke the U.S. EV supply chain, driving up production costs and delaying manufacturing timelines for Tesla and other American automakers. The targeting of Tesla is no accident. As a symbol of U.S. innovation and the leading EV brand in Canada, Tesla represents a high-profile leverage point for Ottawa to signal its discontent with U.S. trade policies. By hitting Tesla, Canada aims to disrupt America's ambitions in the global EV race while boosting its own domestic manufacturers. Companies like Lion Electric and others backed by Canadian investment stand to gain market share as Tesla's prices rise and subsidies vanish. Moreover, Canada's actions reflect a broader push to assert control over its natural resources, particularly rare earths, which are increasingly critical in the transition to green technologies. The implications for the U.S. EV sector are profound. Higher costs for Tesla could ripple across the industry, affecting competitors like Ford, GM, and Rivian, all of which rely on similar supply chains. If Canada follows through on mineral export restrictions, the entire North American EV ecosystem could face delays and price hikes, undermining consumer adoption of electric vehicles at a time when climate goals are paramount. For Canadian consumers, the loss of affordable Tesla options may push them toward domestic or foreign alternatives, potentially opening the door for competitors like China's BYD to gain a foothold. This trade spat also carries risks of escalation. The U.S. could retaliate with tariffs on Canadian auto parts or other goods, harming firms like Magna International and deepening economic strain on both sides. Beyond economics, the dispute tests the resilience of the U.S.-Canada alliance, long a cornerstone of North American stability. As both nations grapple with the fallout, the path forward hinges on whether cooler heads can negotiate a truce, or if this clash will spiral into a broader trade war, with Tesla and the EV industry caught in the crossfire. The United States is grappling with a wave of economic instability, driven by aggressive trade policies and unpredictable domestic decisions that have sent financial markets into a tailspin. A recent plunge in major stock indices, triggered by disappointing economic data and confusion over tariff plans, has heightened fears of a broader downturn. As President Trump pushes for sweeping tariffs on imports from all trading partners, analysts are sounding alarms about catastrophic consequences, while key allies like Canada and the European Union are mounting fierce resistance. This confluence of domestic missteps and international backlash threatens to plunge the U.S. economy into uncharted territory. The market's sharp decline reflects growing unease about the direction of U.S. economic policy. Investors, rattled by reports of rising inflation and uncertainty over trade measures, have pulled back, erasing significant value from stocks in a single day. This volatility is not merely a reaction to global trends, but a direct consequence of proposed policies, particularly a plan to impose a universal tariff on all goods entering the U.S. Such a blanket approach, intended to protect American industries, risks backfiring by inflating costs for businesses and consumers alike. Economists warn that widespread tariffs could lead to millions of job losses, higher unemployment, and a substantial hit to economic growth, with some estimating a significant chance of recession if retaliatory measures escalate. The universal tariff proposal has drawn sharp criticism from analysts, who highlight its potential to disrupt supply chains and erode consumer confidence. By taxing imports indiscriminately, the U.S. could face skyrocketing prices for everyday goods, from electronics to groceries, squeezing household budgets already strained by inflation. Businesses, particularly those reliant on global trade, would struggle to absorb higher costs, potentially cutting jobs or passing expenses onto customers. The ripple effects could destabilize industries ranging from manufacturing to retail, undermining the very economic strength the tariffs aim to bolster. Internationally, the U.S.'s aggressive stance has provoked strong pushback from allies. Canada, a long-standing partner, has rejected the tariff threats, emphasizing the need to protect its workers and economy. Canadian leaders are exploring ways to diversify trade, reducing reliance on the U.S. market. Similarly, the EU has vowed to safeguard its industries, warning that retaliatory tariffs could escalate into a broader trade war. These responses signal a fracturing of traditional alliances, as partners question the U.S.'s commitment to mutual prosperity. The EU's robust internal market and Canada's resource wealth give them leverage to resist, potentially isolating the U.S. economically. As markets reel and allies push back, the U.S. faces a critical juncture. The promise of tariffs as a tool for economic revival is clouded by the reality of global interdependence. Without careful negotiation, the pursuit of unilateral policies could deepen economic woes, leaving businesses, workers, and consumers to bear the cost of a miscalculated gamble. The path ahead demands a delicate balance to restore stability and rebuild trust, both at home and abroad. The United States is grappling with a deepening sense of unease as economic challenges and policy decisions fuel widespread dissatisfaction among its citizens. Rising unemployment, plummeting consumer confidence, and a wave of protests signal a growing disillusionment with the nation's leadership, particularly President Trump's economic agenda. Once loyal supporters, drawn by pledges of prosperity and national renewal, are now voicing frustration over policies that seem to prioritize the wealthy while leaving working-class families to face mounting hardships. This domestic unrest threatens to reshape the political landscape as Americans demand accountability and change. Economic indicators paint a troubling picture. Joblessness is creeping upward, particularly in rural communities that once formed the backbone of Trump's support base. These areas, reliant on stable employment in industries like manufacturing and agriculture, are feeling the pinch of trade disruptions and policy uncertainty. Consumer confidence, a key driver of economic activity, has also taken a hit, with households growing wary of spending amid fears of inflation and stagnant wages. The combination of job insecurity and eroded trust in the economy is creating a pervasive sense of anxiety, as families struggle to make ends meet in an environment that feels increasingly unstable. Public frustration has spilled into the streets, with protests erupting across cities and towns. Demonstrators, including some who previously backed Trump, are decrying policies they see as betraying the very promises that won their votes. Cuts to critical social programs, such as healthcare and veteran services, have sparked outrage, particularly among those who rely on these supports. At the same time, rising costs for essentials like food and electricity are squeezing budgets, amplifying perceptions of neglect. Critics point to tax breaks for billionaires as evidence of misplaced priorities, accusing the administration of favoring the elite over ordinary Americans who were promised an economy that puts them first. The voices of dissent are growing louder, even in regions that overwhelmingly supported Trump in recent elections. Stories of regret are emerging from communities where federal job cuts and economic stagnation have left residents feeling abandoned. Protesters are rallying around slogans that call for fairness and accountability, reflecting a broader shift in sentiment. For many, the vision of a thriving America has been overshadowed by the reality of policies that seem to widen inequality and erode opportunity. This erosion of trust is not just personal but collective, as entire communities question whether the leadership they endorsed can deliver on its commitments. The implications of this unrest are profound. A fractured electorate could reshape future political alignments, challenging the administration to address grievances or risk further alienation. For the economy, sustained discontent could dampen growth, as cautious consumers and businesses pull back. As the nation navigates this turbulent moment, the challenge lies in rebuilding confidence and ensuring that policies reflect the needs of all Americans, not just a privileged few. Without a course correction, the divide between promise and reality may only deepen, testing the resilience of the social fabric.